Hello, everyone. It's 11 o'clock. It's great to be back. Today, we're talking conflict resolution. And I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome Marina Visner from Sectional Title Solutions. Hi, Marina. How are you?
Hi, Marina. I'm good, thanks. And you?
Good, good. Very well. Thank you. So picture this. Sectional title schemes running smoothly. Conflict resolutions being resolved with confidence, and women in the space acting and leading with authority and grace. Does it sound like utopia? Yes, I think it certainly does, but we do have to be aspirational and optimistic. So welcome to everybody who's just joined us here on Women in Sectional Title at our webinar, where all our challenges meet practical solutions and where strong women build even stronger communities. Thank you very much to Sectional Title Solutions, We Connect You, and PKF Octagon. And I will formally now introduce Marina now that everybody's on board. So welcome to a strong lady. Marina Visner is the Group Company Secretary at Sectional Title Solutions, which is one of our really valued sponsors, from the Group Corporate Governance, Risk and Compliance Division. Marina, tell us, I just want to ask you about the Invictus Awards at Sectional Title Solutions before we dive right in.
Yes, maybe I can give some more light on that. So we have recently introduced our Invictus Awards internally for our group entity. If we look at our recent growth, it was quite significant. And we've actually introduced quite an incentive for our staff members as well when we award from a CEO award right through to our chairman awards as well, for some charity work that's being done, for innovation, for quite a number of items as well. We do have for collaboration, to obviously enhance our staff members, and to upskill them from that perspective as well.
Fantastic. And you're quite humble because I see that you don't mention that you won the Spotlight Award for leadership.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that was quite a significant one. I have recently introduced, because I'm the head of our GRC department, meaning governance, risk and compliance. So we are looking at innovation to quite an extent. So I've onboarded Diligent. I'm not sure everybody is aware of the software, which is quite a significant one, from a data integration right through to risk management and compliance management and board management, actually. So yes, that was, from an innovation perspective, that is what I was awarded for.
Fantastic. Well done. Congrats from all of us here at Women in Sectional Title.
Thank you.
And now let's go into our general discussion on conflict management. And we all know in sectional title schemes, close proximity, people living together, I mean, it's going to cause problems. But what are the unique problems, or what are the unique kind of, what makes this conflict unique compared to other property disputes, Marina?
Marina, I think you've nailed hit the nail on the head when you basically said where it is in communal property. Sectional titles is quite unique in the sense of it's a community of property owners on the one end, but then we all share common spaces as well and responsibilities, which you can just imagine can easily lead to conflicts and disputes.
And what are the most common kind of disputes that you guys are seeing at the moment? I mean, I know what I'm seeing, but let's see if we can compare notes.
Yes, sure. So I think a very obvious one is noise complaints. If we look at just different lifestyles, lack of consideration of your neighbor, parking disputes. I think people, especially our managing agents joining today can tell us a lot about that, with limited parking space, lack of clear enforcement. We get pet disputes to quite an extent as well. We also get maintenance and repair disputes, so unclear on responsibilities, who needs to maintain what, or purely just delayed maintenance or poor maintenance. Another one is also disagreement over rules. lack of awareness of those rules, lack of understanding, or purely just inconsistent enforcement thereof. And I think the last one also on misrepresentation at the time when the property is purchased, because often, and I think a lot of people come across this, is when they purchase a property, not always understanding and knowing they're buying a sectional title property. And then before they know it, they get hit with rules and not obeying them, but not even actually being aware of them.
So as a managing agent now sitting at your desk, and I know that there are a lot of managing agents, we had 180 registrations for this webinar. So there are managing agents sitting here and they'll also watch the recording. Sitting at their desks, they get an email and there's conflict in one of the schemes, one of the buildings that they run. Now, apart from the other 100 buildings that they run, they now have to deal with this. So it's about reframing. So how does a managing agent, how does a portfolio manager now shift mindset to see this whole thing as a bit of an opportunity rather than as this dark, oh my goodness, I have to deal with this again today kind of situation?
Marina, the best advice I would give them is to see conflict more as a catalyst for improvement. They need to foster a culture of open dialogue, try to turn conflict into more community building. The advice I can give them as well is rather try to increase accountability and transparency by empowering your residents to resolve issues, meaning issue them with the right guidelines, the right rules, etc. But try and empower them as well and create that as an opportunity so that there's more internal resolution to conflicts in your community schemes.
I think that's hard, isn't it? Because so many of the, so many trustees will just look at the managing agent and say, you do it, sort it out, write a letter, deal with it. And again, I agree with you. I don't think that's necessarily the right way to go. If we're going now into neighbor disputes, so neighbors, what is the old adage? Good fences, you've written, there's an article by Sectional Title Solutions, if anyone wants to go on their website, such interesting content. Good fences make good neighbors. Well, then a lot of fences must be broken because I'm not seeing a lot of good neighbors around at the moment. So tell us, I mean, we've got a dispute between neighbors. Where do we go? What's the first thing? Like what's the best way that you feel you can resolve these disputes?
So if I need to view it more from a capacity of, being a neighbor, I would recommend that one encourages open communication. If needs be, use mediation services. Try to establish clear communication channels, promote empathy, mutual respect, and compromise. I mean, I think a lot of times people do not always see the value, of to compromise. I feel like it's their property, and why do I need to? But often one needs to meet your neighbor halfway as well.
Also tough, but then you've got your classic situation. Where does the managing and when does the managing agent get involved? How far can you take it? How do you fob them off as a managing agent? So listen, that's a neighbor thing, neighbor problem. I've heard that a lot in my when the neighbors come to me as the attorney. So how does that work?
So I would recommend that obviously there needs to be a clear line established as to when you actually escalate to managing agent and trustee. A line being drawn, for example, when there is the dispute actually escalates beyond informal resolution, meaning where there's a continued communication breakdown, repeated disruptions, when the dispute actually violates community rules, your community scheme rules, when the dispute actually involves multiple parties or have an impact on your community scheme, and when there is actually mediation requested.
And also trustees tend to fob off this responsibility, I've noticed. I mean, I've got a building here now on my desk where the trustees do not want communication from anybody. They think you do everything through the managing agent. I think that's a little bit of a cop-out for me. But if you could pinpoint one mistake that neighbors make when trying to resolve a conflict, what would you say that mistake would be?
I would say, if I need to summarize it, is a lot of neighbors actually avoid the actual issue or ignoring the conflict. So meaning they don't address it then and there. They actually let it build up and becoming actually a bigger frustration. A lot of times they're being very confronting. Sorry, they're being a very aggressive. They make assumptions about intentions, which is not necessarily, intended. They involve third parties too soon, and they do not set clear boundaries or expectations, in those discussions as well. And again, I'm referring back to the whole compromise, not being willing to compromise.
Mm. Can I tell you what I also think is a mistake? And it goes under your point of aggression. Sometimes it's all about tone of voice for me. Tone of voice. I had a trustee in a meeting yesterday. An owner, not a trustee, an owner. She comes in, and just from the general tone of how she's speaking to me, telling me the story, it would raise the hackles on my back if I was a trustee or a neighbor dealing with her. It's simply tone of voice, and also all these keyboard warriors who are actually quite passive aggressive in real life if you meet them over the fence. But once they get behind their computers, then all of a sudden they become like a raging bull. That again, just tone. That's what I think. Okay, we're going on to now meetings. Tell us a little bit about, we've seen a couple of trustee meetings and owner meetings becoming heated. I've kind of distanced myself from attending meetings, to be honest, because I find that they can just be a bun fight, especially where there are issues that are going to arise. What are some proven techniques in a meeting kind of environment where you can bring that temperature down and distract from arguments?
Marina, I'd say definitely it goes into obviously the planning and the preparation for the meeting, when there needs to be clear agendas and expectations set. There needs to be ground rules for communication at these meetings. A very big point is also to ensure that you do have your objective and neutral chairperson that's actually running this meeting. Another point of advice would be to focus on solutions, not problems. To use a timekeeper to make sure that they keep the meeting efficient, meaning that they stick to the points as per the agenda and not get distracted by any other issues raised. To implement a structured decision-making process, and then to allow for breaks when necessary. So when the actual discussions in the meeting do become very heated, take a break, everybody get a cup of coffee, and then we engage again, because that usually just helps one to then actually address the points and to start and to again focus on the solution and not necessarily the problem at hand.
And what is your take on meetings where people are just muted? If somebody becomes too aggressive or wants to monopolize or control the conversation, like again, this particular matter, this woman said, and I can't believe it was the AGM. I wanted to just raise this problem in a very bad tone. And she was muted by the managing agent, by the portfolio manager. And yes, I can see all the portfolio managers through the screen grinning, because maybe you guys have done that once or twice. But doesn't it just serve to perpetuate that kind of anger and feeling of exclusion?
I would say, Marina, it comes down to how, again, the planning and the preparation of the meeting goes and what was communicated. It comes down to if you have clearly established the rules of the meeting, the process, how the meeting will take place, meaning that, these aggressors will not be allowed, to interrupt the meeting. I feel like that is a fair point when one can rather take it offline, when you can then calmly address that person. Because it's often not best to do the washing in public, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Joanne, hi, Joanne Stegman. She says something needs to be done. She says, on the point that people don't know what they're buying into, the important point to be added to the law in the Act is that it's required for owners to sign that they have received a copy of all regulations governing sectional title, as well as confirming that they have read the short overview of the sectional titles, I suppose, Act given to them. New owners need to understand this and be facilitated by the trustees. A huge effort, please, to make people aware of body corporate regulations. Well, Joanne, there, I think you're being exceptionally optimistic to think that owners are going to read anything to do with sectional title. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, the ignorance of the law is no excuse. And certainly maybe a simplified kind of version of that can be given to owners to read. Yeah, definitely. It's all about it's preventative kind of maintenance in terms of relationships and relationship building. What's your advice for a managing agent? There you've got your portfolio manager sitting in this meeting and almost feeling like they've been personally attacked. What's your advice for them?
My best advice would be is to try your best to stay calm and to not respond emotionally or immediately. Rather to separate the personal feelings that you do get when that person is actually attacking you from professional. Try to clarify the issues objectively and set boundaries for respective communication. Rather tell them, look, let's take this offline and let's set up a separate meeting where we can have this discussion. Let's all cool down and let's focus on the facts and not necessarily on the personal or emotional elements of the matter at hand.
But I suppose you would agree, Morena, that you need a strong person to lead a meeting. And I think that that's where managing agents also need to kind of dig a little deeper in terms of the portfolio managers that they might maybe send out to meet the onslaught, especially when they know there's going to be a meeting that's going to be tough. I mean, I've seen some revolting behavior where owners start throwing things out at AGMs and special general meetings. And sometimes the portfolio managers are young. This might be maybe their first meeting. So managing agents, I think, need to offer a little bit more support to their portfolio managers, the senior ones especially, to have a look at that. Okay. My favorite's coming up now. My favorite, and let me tell you, I belong to many WhatsApp groups. I'm actually, really seriously considering just politely removing myself, but then I don't know how to do that without offending people. But these WhatsApp groups, the escalation of aggression on WhatsApp groups can be quite remarkable. So how can trustees and managing agents set some ground rules on these WhatsApp groups?
So I would say in order for you to actually prevent these toxic discussions and, for things to come up on these WhatsApp groups that is not necessarily, that steers away from the actual focus of that group, is to set expectations and rules for respectful communication. Define the purpose of that group and remove all that goes against that purpose. You do not allow spamming or excessive messaging. You have a dedicated moderator or group admin for that WhatsApp group. And you encourage direct communication where it gets to the personal issues, and rather from the get-go, communicate a clear escalation procedure, whereas people will know, look, this is what we will be focusing on in this group, this is what will be allowed, and this is what will not be allowed, and you actually stick to it and manage that group effectively.
And what if you've got a portfolio manager who's managing and moderating? What's one sentence you can use, or the wording that you can use if somebody's getting out of hand on a group and it's all going pear-shaped? You can just see it.
I would say take it offline, keep your message short and neutral, and avoid to react emotionally.
Excellent. And you've got Natalie Peterson. Hi, Natalie. She says, I set up rules for our WhatsApp group along with a clear message that if the person violates the rules, they will be removed, and that the group is only for complex issues. Okay, although I must admit, sometimes on a group when things get a little bit escalated, it's quite entertaining. I feel like getting my popcorn and just seeing what's going to come next, because crazy. Also, let's just have a look. Kath, you ask about an autonomous chairman. We're just taking it a little bit, we're just digressing slightly, but we have time. You've got a chairman that makes autonomous decisions and obviously is quite a stubborn person and doesn't want to listen to the other trustees, pushes decisions through, and other trustees just sign off on invoices, and yeah, becomes a problem. I'm seeing this more and more because chair people and the guy in charge or the lady in charge, generally they always say, I've been running this building for the last 25 years. And I know what's good for the building, and it's just quicker if I just do everything and run through it. And of course, we know that that is not the way it works. Trustees have to make decisions with majority decisions, by majority of the trustees. And these autonomous chair people really, really need to be brought to book. Always difficult for the portfolio manager, but again, you need to cover yourselves and just place in writing as a portfolio manager with the trustees that this is not on. You've got to be brave, got to be courageous in sectional title. It's just stonewalled, not a healthy relationship. You don't want to be tarred with the same brush. Make sure that these things are brought out into the open with other owners. Okay? That's my advice. Elizabeth says, I'm just wondering if these rules should be set in the directive or trustees group. Yeah, absolutely. Mutual respect between trustees is important. Okay, now let's go on to quite another very serious issue here is domestic violence in complexes. Schemes, we're seeing it more and more. There's more case law, the more CSOS awards about domestic violence. How do we deal with that as owners, as trustees, as the managing agent? Should we even respond if we suspect something's happening?
Yes, Marina, so my recommendation would be is to take your suspicion of domestic violence seriously. Another advice would be to maintain the confidentiality and the sensitivity around the event at hand. Document the situation very carefully. You need to offer support and resources to the victim. You need to call for professional help. I mean, the Domestic Violence Act offers protection orders to victims, which can include various prohibitions against the perpetrator. There are respective helplines as well that you can just actually introduce to the victim. You can also address the perpetrator if it is appropriate, though. I must highlight this. So, for example, there are ways and means that you can actually do it. So if there is noise from domestic violence and it's a persistent thing and it affects others in your community scheme, it may be classified as a private nuisance. Now, nuisance laws can actually offer some relief, but they're not a complete solution. CSOS can assist by intervening in cases of nuisance behavior, and an adjudication from CSOS may issue an order to manage such disturbances, and failure to comply could result in contempt of court proceedings.
I think, domestic violence is a major problem because you know, again, you don't know really where the line is. So let's just go back into through the courts. If there's domestic violence and I'm an owner or even the portfolio manager might be getting involved, and the perpetrator of the domestic violence becomes even aggressive towards me, how do we go about getting, like a restraining order? That's what I want. You don't have to tell me the exact process, but is that called the binding over the peace order? I mean, I know the answer, but I'm just it's just a rhetorical question.
Marina, I would definitely say that if you look at it from a viewpoint of, what trustees and managing agent can do in those situations, meaning from a legal perspective, I think they should always just remind themselves, obviously of their duty to care and their duty towards the safety of the fellow residents as well. Because remember, a domestic violence won't necessarily just end in that house. It can actually cause, and have an impact on the rest of the community as well. I see you definitely need to have a look at, reporting it at least, so if you look at it maybe from what a reasonable person would do in that position as well, you have that risk of civil liability too, so trustees and managing agents can actually face civil liability if they fail to act reasonably in situations involving domestic violence, especially if their failure to intervene or to report this results in a further harm to a victim or, meaning to a victim or other residents in that community scheme. And again, it comes to they have the duty to uphold their rules within that scheme too.
Exactly. And also, I think a moral duty. I mean, a moral duty. If you know there's a woman being abused in your scheme and you're hearing it every day and every night, I think there's a moral obligation on you to definitely do something. Obviously, not to put yourself in danger, but certainly to do something. And there you go off to the magistrate's court and you can get a binding over of the peace order, which is an ex parte kind of application where there's a return date and somebody can come back and fight it and say why the perpetrator can come back and say why there shouldn't be this restraining order on them. And it's actually quite a good way to go. And I know that the courts do deal with this. There was a recent CSOS adjudication. No, it was, I think it might have been a case. I'll actually look at it and I will send it to everybody, where you had a choice. You can go to CSOS or you can go to the court, right, for binding over the peace order, or you can go then to the court in terms of nuisance, to CSOS in terms of nuisance. And I think the court held that you had to go to CSOS, and then there was an appeal where they said, no, you always have the option to go to court. You don't have to go to CSOS. So because I'm wondering now, at the end of the day, I mean, the people, it's quite an urgent thing, this domestic violence. If I'm going to CSOS, I'm not sure if any of you have had experience with that. And if you have, please pop it on the chat group or we can talk about it now. But I don't know that I would necessarily take a matter to the CSOS on a domestic violence dispute. I'm not 100% sure. I think the courts deal with it more effectively at this stage, but I might be wrong. I don't know. I might be wrong. Anne says domestic violence is not a trustee's responsibility, right? But may be addressed if a nuisance issue. Yeah, I think you would put it under nuisance. I think that's the only way that you would get past the CSOS. Randy says call police and security company. We had a resident who tried to get the kids to safety, but that's also not the right process. Security company and police handled it. Okay, so I think that's, that's important. Okay, so if we're looking at proactive conflict prevention, what are the 3 proactive strategies every sectional title scheme can implement today? Like if you walk out of here as a trustee or as a portfolio manager who can go and tell the trustee something, what would you advise here, Morena?
Thanks, Marina. So I would say they need to establish clear communication channels with ground rules. Secondly, foster a culture of conflict resolution and mediation. And thirdly, implement a clear and transparent dispute resolution policy / process, so that it's very clear, as to what steps needs to be followed should a dispute come up.
Okay, and yeah, I mean, how do we look at, so in general, if you were speaking generally, mediation, you mentioned mediation earlier, Morena. I'm a big believer in mediation, but it's proving to be jolly hard without CSOS to get people around a table to mediate. I know, and I see Zelinda's also said here, lovely to see you, Zelinda. CSOS had said go to police and get a protection order. Yeah, 100% on that matter. But I mean, yeah, how do you go about putting these things into place? And, what would your view be?
So I would definitely, Marina, again, look at my audience. I think that definitely depends on how can I say it? I think the best person to actually know the audience is between your trustees and your managing agent as well. And I would definitely look at, examples, of how these matters were handled in the past, but also to set, for example, how can I say it, at least just steps to follow with regards to dispute resolution. Try and first have that conversation, meaning where it goes to a mediation. Did you guys actually sit around a table and had the discussions, when it was maybe just a miscommunication, it was maybe just an emotional response? Did we actually just have that objective person, being a trustee or a managing agent, to sit with these two people who actually have a dispute and to actually just try and shed some light on the actual conflict, and keep it factual as well?
Oh, it helps. It really helps. I remember after that mediation course I did at one stage, it really made me think about how when you got two people either looking over a table or in separate rooms, because we were taught you can take them to separate rooms to mediate, which is probably better, because sometimes it is so tough for these people to actually even look at each other in the face that it's impossible. So mediation does work. There are times when mediation will obviously not work. I mean, I have a case at the moment in a complex in Sandton, where you've got the chairman and his merry band of men, and they are men. And we've just found out that the chairman has a conviction for armed robbery. So that was quite an interesting situation where owners, have been trying to mediate with this chairman, and this chairman is a bully, and he just, does what he wants, and he's autonomous, like we mentioned before. So we've got to tackle this, but now it's getting aggressive, and obviously these people are used to street fighting. They're used to, getting involved in brawls and pushing people around. So we're going to have to look at getting certain number of protection orders. Another tip that I have for everybody, if other owners know what is going on, and other owners can be notified, sometimes it can de-escalate the situation, because bullies and people who are aggressive don't like it suddenly when they are magnified. So when all the magnifying glass is placed on them, then all of a sudden they step back because now they look bad. And it's not just an argument between myself and a trustee or a portfolio manager. Now everybody, when they drive in and they drive past me, is looking at me in a bit of a strange way. That can also can help. Yeah. Joanne says, we're asked a fellow resident to please uphold the regulations, and was physically pushed around by this man and was told it was an individual matter, and had to lodge a police report and go to a medical examination, become costly. So if trustees stand solid against those not upholding rules, and arrogant residents will do as they please. Yeah. As soon as people start with physical violence, that's just a no-no at the end of the day. I would never accept that. And as a woman on Women in Sectional Title, if ever trustees or anybody is trying to push anybody around from a physical point of view, honestly speaking, I know that Zelinda also would say the same thing. You're welcome to come to us for assistance, and we will assist you, because sometimes a very strongly worded legal letter goes a long way. And that's just absolute a no-no. Don't accept it, and don't ever become complicit in not reporting it. Paul de Stadler from Whitfields. Hello, Paul. I had a matter regarding a domestic violence with CSOS. CSOS advised it is not in their jurisdiction to rule. Parties must use the SAPs via the court process. And again, I think that is all. That goes towards how your CSOS application is couched. In other words, in what terms it's couched. If you're just talking about domestic violence and we're applying to stop the guy from hurting the lady, CSOS definitely is not going to be able to assist with that. But if it's that they're shouting and performing and screaming at 11 o'clock at night, that's again where CSOS will be able to come. You've got to be very careful in how you couch that. Okay, let's just see. Zelinda says, you and Sandra helped me fight my first male bully when I was a candidate attorney. I I don't remember that, but I'm glad you remember it, Zelinda. Zelinda, if you want to just come on, if you can unmute yourself. My assistant Lola, if you can just try and unmute Zelinda, I'd like to just have a chat about that. In the meantime,
Hi, Marina.
oh, there you are. How's it? How are you doing?
Good, good. Sorry, I'm driving. It was a ex-attorney that was retired, and he threatened, or he said he's going to make it his life's mission to ensure that I was not admitted, because in his day, there weren't female candidate attorneys, and candidate attorneys were only seen and not heard, and they weren't allowed to sign off on their own opinions and legal letters. And he addressed correspondence to you guys as directors, how unacceptable he found it that this young female candidate attorney was writing letters to him, and the two of you stood up and really let him have it. So it wasn't a physical one, but it did scare the living daylights out of me. So I thought that he had this type of power over me.
Yeah, I actually, I'm vaguely remembering this now, and yeah, you look back at that experience, and you'd never ever take that on the chin again. But when you're young and you're respectful and you respect your elders, especially the way you've been brought up, it's quite tricky to deal with arrogant people, and also gaslighting. I think we did a whole thing on gaslighting, which is also terrible. Natalie says, can we legally name and shame bullies in the complex? In the UK, they actually did in the local papers with pictures of the culprits. Gosh, that would be fun. So I'm not sure, Natalie. I don't know. I wouldn't tell you to do that, because obviously you're open to defamation claims. But there are two defenses to defamation, and those defenses are that it's the truth and that it's for public benefit. So you might get away with it, but just be very careful before you do anything about naming and shaming anybody, because you can find yourself on the back foot, and then that bully will love it and sort of rub it in your face. I know the UK are extremely pedantic about this. And I know with pedophiles and that type of thing, they do release and publish in the local municipality, kind of almost like it's a government gazette for a municipality. But I don't know, if somebody's just being quite assertive, how do you know that they're just being assertive and not a bully? I don't think we have any lists of convicted bullies. So be careful with that. Be careful with that. Good governance is of huge importance in a scheme. We all know that it may be rather trying for trustees at times, but they have the law on their side and each other's support. They need to stand firm. Trustees must be united. They mustn't put up with nonsense. They must be united, but they also mustn't be draconian and, impose their will unilaterally. Hilda says, does anyone have inside information as to when CSOS will be employing more adjudicators? We've been waiting over a year to finalize a dispute where trustees are bullying the managing agent. I think it's easy to refer to what cases CSOS can help with, but they actually need to help. I know that if you have a look at one of our webinars, Hilda, I'm not sure, I think it was 3 months ago maybe, I had a chat with the chief ombud who did let us know what challenges they were having and did give us the timeframes of when adjudicators were being appointed. So if you go to the events page on Women in Sectional Title on the website, you go into the events page and you'll see all of our webinars, and they're all recorded, so you can just go down and listen to any one of them at any time. So you can go have a look at that. Elizabeth from CRM. Hello, Elizabeth. I had a ground floor unit complaining of noise during the day from a unit above, sent warning letters and fines, but we keep getting complaints. It came to a point where the unit above now complains of the ground floor unit, became a petty fight. Now this is between an owner on the ground floor and a tenant on the first floor. Offered both a sit down, but the owner refused and said they will only meet with the owner, not a tenant, but the owner is not responding to calls and emails sent to them. I did suggest to the owner to file a CSOS case, but they want the body corporate to handle it. Well, I suppose you can only go as far as you can go with that. If there's no mediation, then I think she needs to take it to CSOS. Roxy says, hi, Moraine, I'm sorry I joined late, maybe unrelated, but what can trustees do about members who bully trustees and then give instructions for stuff to be done but won't stand as a trustee? Moraine, would you like to answer that?
Yes, sure. So again, I would say get down to the rules. It goes all back to your enforcement of the rules and the approaches on how to actually handle disputes and or personal that can be perceived as personal attacks, being the bullying. I'd say go back, take emotions out of it, and rather take the right approaches with regards to what is defined in your procedures, what is actually defined in your rules and your regulations, and rather approach it from that point of view, to not let them have that emotional response, to not allow them to get that out of you, because often, people do tend to get to know people, and bullies, they know just what buttons to push often. And I think it is, if you can just master that by applying, the situation calmly and factually, that is the best advice I can give.
Morena, I also have trustees coming to my office who are in this position, and they say, particularly with one or two owners, let's just say, these owners have got power in their own lives. They might be CEOs of big companies. A lot of them are advocates, I'm very upset to tell you, or attorneys, and they're pushy. They're pushy, they're bullies, they want this, they want that. They call the shots for every single issue they have. They write 20-page letters to the trustees. And I mean, trustees hardly have enough time to deal with their own stuff in the day, never mind to deal with all these letters, which can seem like a huge onslaught. And a tip that I have, and I know that it works, if the trustees do approach an attorney, for the attorney to write a letter to the bully owner to say, look, we understand that you have a number of concerns in the scheme. The trustees are not in a position to look through each and every one of your pieces of correspondence. So from now on, please send whatever your complaints are through this office. And when they have to do that, and the trustees don't, they ignore the letters. They'll just, if he keeps sending letters, they'll say, please send it to the office of whatever my attorney's name is. And we would go through it and pick what battles are worth fighting. I mean, there is a cost to it, but it's worth it. Because all of a sudden, that guy knows he's not going to be intimidating anyone. He doesn't know more than the lawyer knows, usually, and he backs down. They back down. The trick here is to recognize that amongst 100 million complaints received from one bully or gaslighter, there's going to be one thing in there that might bite you if you don't attend to it or if you don't look at it. So that is one way of dealing with it. Definitely something that's worth sharing with any of you. Sandra says, please advise on how to manage a situation where a resident and trustee has been violating sectional title rules and house rules and calls me a troublemaker when the matter was raised by myself. Yeah, that's something we could just end off with. A trustee who is so empowered that they just do everything. And they're the ones who paint their houses, who have everything done for them. The gardener seems to be there all the time. How would you deal with a trustee if they were living in your complex, Morena, like that?
So, Marina, first of all, I would follow the correct procedures to have that trustee removed. And if needs be, and it is a situation where that trustee is a bully, run the process through CSOF to get that trustee removed as well, but actually take action. And just remember, of your rights, as unit owners as well, you can actually get that done, if you follow the correct procedures and get the right people in the right places. I think it is a concept, from business world right through to actually communal living that one can apply, is make sure the right people are in control, and enough to actually be able to actually, you do have the rights to actually get those people out of those wrong seats and get the right people in there.
Thank you so much, Morena. Really appreciate it. And I just want 2 minutes to read something that I received this week from a colleague of mine and a managing agent I met in Australia. And it's so beautiful. I think you need to listen to it. Portfolio managers, have a listen here. By cultivating an artistic mindset in our day-to-day lives and work, Sectional title, apartment, residents, managers, goods and service providers, professionals and others can uncover the hidden beauty within even the most routine tasks, day-to-day activities, their buildings and their decisions. When we look for the beauty in the details or big picture, and when each task becomes a brushstroke contributing to a broader sectional title masterpiece, sectional title life and work itself becomes a source of inspiration, a testament to the transformative power of creativity and care in our shared living and working environments. And if that's one thing that I can say, look a little bit deeper into your everyday job. What are you doing as a portfolio manager, me as a lawyer, everyone at Sectional Title Solutions? What are you actually doing every day? It cannot be a tedious treadmill kind of existence. We have to look outside and just see what other people are doing in the world and reframe things and do see the beauty of things and building community, because that's actually what you're doing. And that is a huge, huge task and something to be very proud of if we do it well. So thank you, Morena from Sectional Title Solutions. You've been fabulous, appreciate it. And again, congratulations on your Invictus Award from Sectional Title Solutions. I think they're definitely going places and you're going there with them. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
to
much,
everybody,
Marianne.
we're going to see you certainly next month. Until then, keep safe and keep working hard. Okay, bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.